This is part 20 in my series of videos on how weird the Marvel Universe would be if John F. Kennedy was assassinated in 1946. On Earth 616, in the three-part miniseries X-Men True Friends, Rachel Summers accidentally transports herself and Kitty Pryde back to 1936, where Kitty helps stop the Shadow King and Baron von Strucker from putting Nazi sympathizer Oswald Mosley on the English throne. But in this alternate world, Scott Summers is adopted by the Bogart family and will be in no position to father a daughter with Jean Grey. No Rachel, no Kitty to thwart these dastardly schemes. But fear not, in True Friends issue 3, Irene Adler and a Mr. Raven tell Wolverine it would be really bad if Kitty assassinated Adolf Hitler, as something worse might replace him. I don't know about worse, but I do agree if Operation Valkyrie had succeeded, the war wouldn't have ended easy peasy lemon squeezy. Mr. Raven is obviously Raven Darkholme, aka Mystique, who interestingly already crossed paths with Logan on Earth 616 in 1921, and he betrayed her and her allies, so she probably was none too pleased to see Logan 15 years later, though I suspect he didn't know it was her. Maybe Irene told Raven, calm down, now is not the time or place. That's neither here nor there, as Logan is off in a Canadian wilderness hanging out with wolves in this timeline. Irene sees things get real bad if somebody doesn't do something. Raven will do whatever Irene says, but against something as powerful as the Shadow King, they'll need extra help. Fortunately, there is somebody in this part of the world who has some experience with the supernatural. Megan Damon from Bizarre Adventures 25. This was her only appearance, but interestingly, she almost appeared in another Chris Claremont penned story called X-Men True Friends, a graphic novel planned for 1984, according to Amazing Heroes 39. The True Friends discussed here bears almost no resemblance to the one we got, other than Kitty Pryde in a starring role, but I thought it was interesting Megan almost featured in a story of that title, and here I am, purely by accident I assure you, bringing her into this alternate version of the True Friends we got. But let's put a pin in that because there are others who oppose this Game of Thrones. Fair warning, this is where it gets weird. In the main timeline, Kitty befriended Alistair Kinross and his cousin Lilibet, who are involved in this because Lilibet is the future Queen Elizabeth, and this story takes place months before her uncle Edward abdicated the throne. If the name Kinross sounds familiar, that would be the maiden name of Moira MacTaggart, who we've known for years was of Scottish nobility. This miniseries just tells us her family are more closely related to Queen Elizabeth than we might have suspected. We don't know exactly how old Moira is when she first meets Charles Xavier, but my detective skills tell me Charles was born in 1936, and recent retcons tell us Moira is a mutant who lives multiple lives, but each life is all in the same Earth designation, like Groundhog Day, but an entire lifetime instead of one day. And when she starts a new life, she carries memories over from the previous life, essentially making her a genius even as an infant. If Moira is about the same age as Charles, let's say she's an infant at the time of this story. She remembers things getting really bad for cousin Lilibet in her previous lives, and she wants to make sure that doesn't happen again. This isn't entirely altruistic. Moira is all about helping mutant kind, and she's taking a stab in the dark and hoping this will help her cause. In Earth 616, when Alistair found out Kitty was a mutant, he was cool with it. If Moira reveals there's more than meets the eye with baby Moira, that when she helps save Lilibet's life and Lilibet eventually becomes queen, maybe she can use her affluence to help mutants. It's worth a shot. So before cousin Lilibet came to visit Alistair, baby Moira got a hold of some paint and wrote a message convincing Alistair Lilibet would be in danger. Because the Nazis weren't all on the same page in this scheme. Von Strucker didn't like or trust the Shadow King, so if it looks like things with Oswald Mosley wouldn't work out, the next best bet would be controlling the House of Windsor. There's already talks Edward VIII would abdicate, so Von Strucker would want a means of keeping the next in line under his thumb. For instance, take Lilibet hostage to ensure her father George acts in the best interests of the Reich, which he probably did in one of Moria's previous lives for her to act so rashly now. Alistair convinces Lilibet they have to go into hiding. Not that hard, she was quite eager to go on an adventure. Remember, Moria has no way of seeing the future, she just remembers how things went in previous lifetimes. Clan Damon has a spooky reputation, which Megan cultivates, as she has sworn to stop any who would cause suffering, as she unknowingly has. Most of the 1% Megan rubs elbows with likely see this as a macabre fascination with the rumored grisly deaths that have surrounded her family and estate. But just as spooky reputation didn't stop the upper crust from trying to court her, it doesn't stop them from regaling her with rumors of ghosts and goblins, which is how she hears rumors of Lady Windermere's friend, a self-professed mentalist and necromancer. Megan probably sees the Shadow King from across a crowded room and gets a nasty vibe from him, and so she convinces her lover Ian to help her look into whatever he and Windermere are up to. Sometimes Irene Adler knows what's happening in the future, and sometimes her vision is a little more vague. Here, she knows the Nazis are up to something dangerous, she knows there's something supernatural at work, and she knows she and Raven should be at this shindig, but the rest is hazy. While we're not explicitly told this, I suspect Mr. Raven has a position in the British government, possibly MI5. Years later, she infiltrated the American government as Raven Darkholme. And around this time, Wolverine was involved in some military action. So while Irene saw something big needed Wolverine's attention and she called in a favor, I find it unlikely Wolverine would get away from official military business on the other side of the world unless Mr. Raven could pull rank. So Mystique sees a face she recognizes from a file. She doesn't have much to go on from Irene. She hopes for the best and tries to kill this guy. This leads to mass chaos. Mystique gets shot in the arm. Megan's boyfriend saw the whole thing, and even though Mystique changes her face into Hullabaloo, Megan and Ian are able to find her thanks to the wound on her arm. Introductions are made. Irene says their chances of success are much better if they work with them. One thing leads to another, and Irene comes face to face with the Shadow King, who reads her mind and sees her visions of the future. In True Friends, the Shadow King first learns about Charles Xavier when he reads Rachel's mind. The Shadow King still fought Xavier in this timeline, so it's likely he found out about him from Destiny, who likely knows how important Charles is, even killed in battle just a few years after he and Magneto formed this world's version of the X-Men. More germane to this video, the Shadow King sees Megan, Ian, and Mystique's attempts to stop his allies, who have caught up to Alistair and Lilibet. Shadow King sees a delicious-looking plan B if his alliance with the Nazis fails, as is looking likely. After the failed assassination attempt, Von Strucker's men found this secret chamber with a magic sword that can only be wielded by the true ruler of the realm. The Shadow King is thinking, why bother with Mosley when he can possess Lilibet and have more direct control over England and eventually the rest of the world? He gives a telepathic warning to Von Strucker's men to subdue Lilibet, and maybe they're a little too zealous and they open fire. Fortunately for Lilibet, they miss her. Ian takes a bullet for her, not even realizing he just saved the future queen with his dying breath. Megan is devastated, and this motivates her to pursue the evil entity that took Ian from her, even if it takes her the rest of her life. Mystique is thinking a little more down to earth. Von Strucker and Geist both got away, though Irene knows that's fine. At least Von Strucker will get his comeuppance in just a few years. Now that the danger is past, Irene sees what Moria was hoping for, that Lilibet will become a valued friend to mutants in the future. One could say, a true friend. That's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, I've got loads of these videos you should check out. They're all at the bottom of my If I Wrote playlist. And I'll probably have some other wacky things cooked up for this world in the future. So look out for that. Until then, have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.